480 BC, the most powerful man alive, King Xerxes of Persia, has assembled an army so vast that ancient historians say it drank rivers dry as it marched. 2 million soldiers. Some say more. 1,000 warships stretching horizon to horizon. The entire might of the known world aimed at one small peninsula of stubborn, fractious, impossible Greeks. Asterisk, and standing between that empire and the destruction of Western civilization was a pass, 100 feet wide. And in that pass, 300 men. Not 300,000, not 300 regiments, 300 men. This is not a story about numbers. This is a story about what happens when a man decides that some things are worth dying for and means it so absolutely that even a god king cannot break him. This is the story of Thermopylae, the hot gates, the pass that didn't just slow an empire, it bled it dry, broke its momentum, and planted the seed of its destruction. Asterisk, to understand why 300 men stood in a narrow pass and chose to die, you have to understand the man who came to kill them. Xerxes, I was not merely a king. He was the king of kings, ruler of Persia, Egypt, Babylon, India. His father Darius had already tried to conquer Greece and had been humiliated at Marathon in 490 BC, where a smaller Athenian force had driven his army into the sea. For Darius, it was a military defeat. For Persia, it was an insult that demanded blood. Darius died before he could return. His son Xerxes inherited the throne, and the grudge, asterisk, for 4 years, Xerxes prepared. He didn't just raise an army. He built one of the greatest military machines the ancient world had ever seen. He dug a canal through the Mount Athos Peninsula to avoid the storms that had wrecked his father's fleet. He built 2 pontoon bridges across the Hellespont, a strait nearly a mile wide, so his army could walk from Asia into Europe. When a storm destroyed those bridges, Xerxes reportedly had the sea whipped 300 times as punishment. That tells you everything about the man. Greece in 480 BC was not a nation. It was a collection of rival city-states who spent most of their time fighting each other. Athens and Sparta could barely agree on the time of day. Many Greek cities, faced with the approaching Persian tide, simply surrendered, sending Xerxes the traditional symbols of submission, earth and water. They were called medizers, Greeks who chose survival over resistance. You cannot judge them too harshly. The Persian army was genuinely terrifying. Ancient sources, even if they exaggerate, agree that it was enormous. Modern estimates put it at perhaps 100,000 to 300,000 men. It was multi-ethnic, professionally equipped, and led by experienced generals who had conquered half the known world. Asterisk, the Greeks who chose to fight were a coalition, held together mostly by fear and the leadership of Sparta and Athens. They held an emergency congress and debated frantically. Where do you stop an army that size? The answer came from geography, and from one Spartan king who saw an opportunity that most men would have called a death sentence. Asterisk, Leonidas was not born a king. He was born a Spartan, which in the ancient world meant something far more demanding. From the age of 7, Spartan boys were taken from their mothers and entered the Agoge, a state-run system of education that was really a system of transformation. You went in as a child. You came out as a weapon. They were deliberately underfed, taught to steal food, and punished not for stealing, but for getting caught. They slept on reeds, they cut themselves. They wore one garment in all seasons. They were beaten, not to punish, but to harden. By the time a Spartan man reached 30 and became a full citizen, warrior, a Spartiate, he had survived something that would break most human beings. And that was the point. Leonidas had completed all of this. He was approximately 60 years old at Thermopylae. not a young man playing at glory, but a veteran who had spent his entire life preparing for exactly this kind of moment. Asterisk, before Leonidas marched, Sparta consulted the oracle at Delphi. The oracle was the most respected source of divine guidance in the Greek world. What came back was not encouragement. The oracle declared that either Sparta would be destroyed or a Spartan king would die. Leonidas heard this. He understood it, and then he chose his 300 men personally, selecting only those who had living sons, so that Sparta's bloodlines would continue after they were gone. Asterisk, read that sentence again slowly. He chose men who had sons, not the best warriors, not the youngest, men who had already reproduced, men whose deaths would not end their family lines. He already knew he wasn't coming back. This is not Hollywood drama. This is documented history, and it tells you something profound about the Spartan king who walked into that pass. He wasn't hoping for a miracle. He was volunteering for a sacrifice, with full understanding of what he was doing. Asterisk. Let us talk about geography, because Thermopylae was not chosen by accident. It was chosen because it was perhaps the most defensible choke point in all of Greece. The pass at Thermopylae in 480 BC was a narrow strip of coast between the cliffs of Mount Kallidromo and the Malian Gulf at its narrowest point, what the Greeks called the Middle Gate. It was barely wide enough for a few men to stand abreast. Think about what that means for a Persian army of hundreds of thousands. They could bring every soldier, every cavalry unit, every war elephant in the world, and at the Middle Gate, none of it mattered. You could only attack in a narrow front. Numbers became irrelevant. Persian cavalry, one of their greatest advantages, was useless in the pass. The Greeks had a defensive wall already partially built at the narrowest point, left over from a previous generation's fear. Leonidas repaired and reinforced it. He positioned his men behind it, with the mountains at their backs and the sea to their left. The Persians would have to come to them, and they would have to come in small numbers. Asterisk. There was one weakness, one catastrophic flaw in this otherwise perfect position. A mountain path, called the Anopeia Path, wound over the mountain ridge and came out behind the Greek position. If the Persians found it and used it, the Greeks would be surrounded and annihilated. Leonidas knew about the path. He placed a force of 1,000 Phocians, local Greek fighters who knew the terrain, on the path to guard it. It seemed like a reasonable precaution. It was not enough. Xerxes arrived at Thermopylae, and according to ancient sources, could not believe what he was seeing. A handful of Greeks, calmly exercising and combing their hair in front of his army. He reportedly asked a Spartan defector named Demaratus, a former Spartan king living in Persian exile, what these men were doing. Demaratus told him the truth. The Spartans were preparing to fight. They always groomed themselves before battle. It was custom. It was dignity. It was a way of saying, "We are not afraid of you." Xerxes reportedly laughed. Then he waited 4 days, expecting the Greeks to flee. They didn't move. On the 5th day, Xerxes sent in the Medes elite soldiers of his empire. Not his best, but certainly not his worst. Battle-hardened veterans who had fought across 3 continents. The Spartans met them at the wall. Asterisk, the Spartan phalanx was the deadliest military formation in the ancient world. Overlapping shields formed a wall of bronze and iron. 8-foot spears, the dory, stabbed from behind that shield wall in coordinated thrusts. When a front row man died, the man behind stepped forward seamlessly. The formation didn't break. It absorbed casualties and kept killing. But the Spartans did something else, something that took the Persians completely by surprise. They feigned retreat, pulling back as if breaking, drawing the Persian soldiers forward in pursuit. Then the phalanx turned, reformed, and closed around them. It was a trap, and the Medes ran straight into it, again and again. The Medes were pulled back and replaced with the Immortals, Xerxes' personal elite guard, 10,000 of the finest soldiers in the Persian Empire. Men who had never been defeated. Men who supposedly could not even die, because when one immortal fell, another immediately took his place to keep their number exactly at 10,000. The Immortals went into the pass. The Immortals came back in worse shape than the Medes. Day one ended with Persia having thrown its finest troops at a narrow pass, defended by Greeks, and having nothing to show for it except thousands of dead. Asterisk. Xerxes reportedly rose from his throne 3 times during the fighting, in anxiety for his army. The man who had whipped the sea was rattled. Asterisk. Day 2 was a repeat of day 1. Fresh Persian units. Fresh casualties. The pass remained Greek. It is important here to understand what this meant strategically. Xerxes' army was enormous, but it was enormous in one direction. It was a column, miles long, snaking back through the mountain passes of northern Greece. It needed to advance. It was burning through supplies. Every day of delay was bleeding it in ways that didn't show up on the battlefield. The army needed to move. Leonidas knew this. The pass didn't just have to hold, it just had to slow. And it was holding. Xerxes needed a solution. A Greek trader was about to give him one. His name was Ephialtes. He was a local Greek man from the region of Malais, the very area Leonidas was defending. He knew the terrain. He knew the Anapeia path. And he sold that knowledge to Xerxes. History does not record what he was paid or what he was promised. History records only what he did and what it cost. That night, under cover of darkness, Xerxes sent his Immortals up the Anapeia path. They moved quietly through the forest, following Ephialtes, moving to come out behind the Greek position at dawn. The Phocian guards on the path heard them coming. They scrambled to arm themselves. But when they saw the full force of 10,000 Persian elite soldiers emerging from the trees, they made a decision. They fell back to the high ground to defend themselves rather than running to warn Leonidas. It was a reasonable, human decision. It was also catastrophic. Asterisk. Word reached Leonidas at dawn, not from the Phocians, but from other sources. A seer named Megistius read the omens and declared that death was coming with the morning light. Deserters from the Persian army warned him directly. Leonidas held a council, and he made the decision that has echoed through 25 centuries of human history. Asterisk. He sent most of the allied Greek forces home. This is often misunderstood. Leonidas did not abandon his allies. He released them. There is a profound difference. The other Greeks, the Thespians, the Thebans, the various allied contingents, had families. Their deaths at this point would serve no strategic purpose. The pass was lost. The position was about to be surrounded. The Thespians, however, refused to leave. 700 Thespians stayed and died alongside the Spartans, a fact that history often forgets to its shame. The Thebans were reportedly kept by force, fighting under duress, and many surrendered to the Persians when the end came. But the 300 Spartans, they didn't waver. They didn't negotiate. They didn't look for a way out. Herodotus records an exchange between a Persian and a Spartan soldier before the final battle. The Persian taunted that Persian arrows would blot out the sun. The Spartan, tradition names him Dinex, replied, asterisk, good, then we will fight in the shade. That line is not propaganda. It is not written by Hollywood screenwriters. It is in Herodotus, written within living memory of the battle, from accounts by men who were there or knew those who were. What kind of man says that? What kind of training produces that response to death? Not bravado, something colder and more absolute than bravado. A man who has already accepted the outcome and found, somewhere on the other side of that acceptance, something that looks almost like peace. On the third day, knowing they were surrounded, the Spartans and Thespians advanced from behind the wall. They didn't hold the gate. They attacked. They pushed forward into the widest part of the pass, fighting with full aggression, killing as many Persians as possible before the encirclement was complete. Their spears broke. They fought with swords. Their swords broke. Herodotus writes that at the end, they fought with their hands and teeth. Leonidas was killed in the fighting. Ancient sources record that the battle over his body was fierce, that the Persians attacked 4 times to take the corpse, and were driven back 4 times by the Spartans, who refused to yield it. Eventually, Persian arrows finished what Persian swords could not. Asterisk, they fell on a small hill at the end of the pass. Every Spartan, every Thespian, the seer Megistius, who had been offered release and refused it, they all died in that place. Xerxes, enraged beyond reason, which tells you everything about how badly the stand had rattled him, ordered Leonidas' head cut off and his body crucified. This was extraordinary. Persian tradition was to honor brave enemies in death. The fact that Xerxes violated his own customs tells you that Leonidas had gotten to him in a way that pure military defeat never could. Asterisk Thermopylae was, technically, a Persian victory. The pass fell. Xerxes marched south, earned Athens, and reached the peak of his campaign. But Thermopylae had done something that cannot be measured in territory captured or enemies killed. It had given the Greek fleet time to organize. Days earlier, a violent storm had already destroyed hundreds of Persian ships off Cape Artemisiu. The Persian navy was weakened. The Greek navy, led by the Athenian admiral Themistocles, had a plan. They lured the Persian fleet into the narrow straits of Salamis. In September 480 BC, weeks after Thermopylae, the Greek fleet shattered the Persian navy at the Battle of Salamis. Xerxes watched from a golden throne on the shore as his empire's greatest instrument of power was destroyed in front of him. Without naval supply lines, his massive army could not be sustained in Greece. He retreated. The following year, the remaining Persian force was destroyed at the Battle of Plataea. The invasion was over. Greece was free. Could any of this have happened without Thermopylae? Perhaps not. The Greek coalition was fragile. It needed a symbol. It needed proof that Persian soldiers could be fought and killed. It needed time for Salamis to be organized. Thermopylae provided all 3. The Greeks later erected a monument at the pass where the Spartans fell. On it was carved an inscription written by the poet Simonides. It is one of the most perfect sentences in the history of human language. Go, tell the Spartans, stranger passing by, that here, obedient to their laws, we lie. Obedient to their laws. Not their orders, their laws. Not commanded by a king to die, but choosing death because their civilization demanded it of them. And they agreed. That is why we still remember them, 2,500 years later. That is why their story has been told and retold in every century since. Not because 300 men died, history is full of men who died, but because they chose to die, understood why they were dying, and by dying, changed the world. Xerxes brought 2 million soldiers to conquer the idea of freedom. 300 men told him, "Not today, **, and they were right.